Hello all and welcome back. Today we are going to draw Bakugo from My Hero Academia. His first appearance was in the manga My Hero Academia from 2014, and he also appeared later in the anime of the same title, My Hero Academia. Bakugo is violent, he's scrappy, he's loud and aggressive, and he's a jump first, think later type of hero. He just goes right in and goes for the gut. Unlike the protagonist, Deku, Izuki Midoriya, who is more level-headed and likes to think through problems and tries to solve problems by thinking about them before jumping into action. He'll analyze an attack and go for what he feels is the smartest action. Bakugo, on the other hand, he's just going to jump in, guns blazing, blasting away, not really worried about the damage he's causing or what's going on around him as long as he wins. Okay, for the pencils and the character design, I pretty much went with the way I draw everything, my standard comic book style. I wasn't happy with the way the head was going. I liked ideas and things that were coming together, but in the end, I really just decided to go with his manga look, because I just like that look with the little pointy nose, and I gave him the menacing grimace he has when he's fighting somebody and, trying to intimidate or scare his opponent while he's blasting away at whatever he's looking at off screen here. My introduction to My Hero Academia came on a trip to visit my sister. She was living about 10 hours away from where I lived in the Midwest, and we took a family trip to see her, and I was hanging out in the living room with my nephew, and he knows I'm into comics and animation and all that fun stuff, so he's like, have you seen this thing, My Hero Academia? It's an anime. I'm like, no, I haven't really watched anime since since Cowboy Bebop, so I'm kind of out of the loop on those things. He's like, oh, you gotta watch this, it's great, it's about a school for superheroes, and they're all learning how to be heroes, and I think you'll like it. And I did, and me and my nephew, we sat around and we binge-watched the whole thing from the first episode to wherever it was, and then when I went home, I got myself a Crunchyroll account, or was it a Funimation? I think I got a Funimation account. And I picked up on it from there, and I watched the whole thing up to now, and we'll be getting the last season soon, so it'll be kind of cool to see how that ends. It kind of reminded me of, well, it didn't remind me of, but it made me think, what if, somewhere in New York City, someone, a hero like Iron Man or Captain America decided, there's a lot of young heroes out here, and they need to learn how to control themselves and use their powers and not be brash, and we want them to survive and not get caught up in the politics of everything. So they started a school to teach younger heroes how to control their powers and how to save people, and kind of like, Spider-Man. He had to learn on his own, and he had to deal with J. Jonah Jameson and the Daily Bugle disparaging him at every turn and calling him a criminal, when if he just had a safe place to go, he might have ended up in a better place at the time. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Spider-Man. He's a good guy. He's got a clean head on his shoulder, but, he had to learn as he went along, and made a lot of mistakes along the way. Sort of like, with Uncle Ben and the great power comes great responsibility. If he had a mentor, he might have avoided all of that. So here you can see we decided on a more traditional anime style face for him, and the hair, I probably would have drawn hair like this anyway, but I mean, the way that I like to draw hair lines up perfectly with stuff like this, just a big, pointy, blocky shape, so that was fun, and I enjoyed getting that done, and the hands and the blasters, and, this was fun. I took some liberties with things because, I just kind of have a problem with that. I don't usually draw things exactly the way they're supposed to be. You got to have a little fun with it and make it your own, unless you're working for Marvel or DC or the guy who created My Hero, and you have to draw things and follow their character sheets. But if not, have fun with it. Make it your own. My history at anime is a bit different than what you have now. Back when I was younger, you couldn't just walk into any store and see action figures and videos and DVDs of series that are fairly affordable. The only way to really get good anime back when I was younger was to get bootlegs. I remember going to comic book conventions and Hiltons and hotels in the ballroom, and they'd have mostly comic dealers. Every once in a while they'd have a comic creator there, and there was always a table with these Japanese kids, and they always had these bootleg anime tapes. And what they used to do is they knew people in Japan and they would import all the new movies in. And then they knew a girl who spoke fluent Japanese, because apparently they didn't, and she would translate the movies for them. And then I don't know how they did it, but they had whatever technology you had back in the late 90s to put the subtitles on the screens. So basically you had a copy of a copy of a copy of a tape that was subtitled by a bunch of kids who I'm going to assume were local, because they were the same ones at every show. And they would just have tables full of videotapes. And you would buy them, and they weren't all that expensive. The one I remember the most was called The Wind Ninja Chronicles, and I loved it. It was like a samurai story, and eventually it was officially released, and it was called Ninja Scroll. So if anybody wants to watch a great classic samurai anime, I would recommend Ninja Scroll, or The Wind Ninja Chronicles as I know it. Okay, we're back to Bakugo here, and he's starting to come together. We got the basic shape of his pose and his costume in place. I still got to figure out the hands. They're pretty much stay that way. I just clean them up and add his gauntlets, which are giant grenades, which is actually kind of fun and cool. I actually really like that his hero name is Great Explosion Murder God Dynamite. I mean, that's a mouthful, but it tells you exactly who he is as soon as you hear it. And then every time he says it, how everybody around's like, you can't call yourself that. What are you, freaking crazy? No. But he goes with it, and he owns it. Back to my early anime experience, it actually started to get a little more common later in my teens, where, I mean, it wasn't everywhere, and people weren't wearing t-shirts and going to conventions dressed as any of the characters, but it got to the point where you could walk into a video store, because that was a thing back then. You go in and you buy DVDs and videotapes, and they were expensive. You would get like 2 episodes of a TV show like Evangelion, and it was like $40 or $60 for 2 episodes. So if you wanted that whole thing, it was a major investment. And when you're a teenager, that's kind of not a thing you're really able to do. So when I would get a few extra dollars and I wanted to see a new anime, I would buy a movie, like the aforementioned Ninja Scroll or Vampire Hunter D or some of those classics. I did end up buying Cowboy Bebop. I think those were 4 episodes of tape, so it wasn't terrible. And that's one that I still watch to this day. And every once in a while they put the movie in the theaters, and I'll take the day to go see it and con somebody into coming with me. And I feel sorry for them, but there's always a friend who's willing to take a bullet for the team. Okay, and here we finally got his hands together and figured out the shapes for those. And then I realized I forgot to put the grenades on his belt, so we got to draw those in. And it's definitely starting to look like something. I mean, my pencils are almost always a mess, but you can see the shape and the pose and the style and the way the fabric's going to go. And, you know, eventually I'll get to spotting the blacks, because I picked his winter costume, or the one he had, I think, in the second movie. I don't remember the name of it. I'd have to look that up, but we're not going to do that now. You know, it just covers him more, and it's more black, and it's more menacing looking. And if you watch any of my other videos, you know that I like adding black to things, so this was the perfect choice. And right here, we're figuring out his arm layout and the gauntlets, which are kind of a perspective thing, so they fade into the background, so you don't really see the full shape, but you see enough to know what they are. And later on, when I do the explosion around his hands, it obscures some of it, but I did it in a way where you can still see everything underneath, because if you're going to draw something like this, you want people to see it. The world of My Hero Academia is kind of like our world, except for being a hero is a job. So you go to school. It's almost like going to tech school, like Porter and Chester or Pratt and Whitney, where instead of enrolling in HVAC or automotive technicians or nursing, you enroll in the hero course, and then you graduate. You get a hero license, and then you patrol the streets as a hero and saving people from villains and people who are using their quirks to further their own evil desires instead of helping society. Some of them do it for the money, some of them do it for the fame, and some of them do it because they just want to help people. The number one hero of the time, of course, is All Might. All Might is pretty much your Superman of the time, except I don't think he flies. He's just really strong and beats the hell out of everybody. And he always does it with a smile on his face, with his signature, "Don't worry, I am here." And with that, he saves the day and he smiles and everybody's happy and he always wins. Except for he was seriously injured in a fight for All for One, the big villain of the arc, where he basically can steal quirks from people. Quirks is what they call their superpowers, and hoard them, and he basically wants to take over the world. And All Might stops him at a great cost. He loses some internal organs and he's permanently damaged, and he can only keep his hero form for a certain amount of time. So he goes to teach at UA Academy. When you first, well, I don't know, it's not really when you first see him, but what the part that I remember is there's like this blob thing in an alley, and it sucks up Bakugo, and Bakugo is helpless. And Deku, who has no powers, but he wants to be a hero, he runs in to save him, and he tries to save his friend, who was captured by this thing, but obviously there isn't much he could do because he's powerless. And at that time, All Might shows up and saves the day and saves Bakugo and saves Deku. And All Might, turns out his quirk could be passed on to other people. And since he has been seriously injured and really can't continue fighting much longer because he's slowly dying and can't use his power for more than an hour a day, I think at the time, or 2 hours a day at the time, he could pass it on. And seeing how selfless Midoriya was, Deku, he decides he's going to pass his power on to him because he sees a lot of himself in Deku because he also didn't have a quirk and inherited it from somebody else who saw the same in him. So he passes his power on to Deku, and then eventually they go to the tryouts for to get into UA Academy, and him and Bakugo, they have to fight giant robots and everything, and they pass the test and they get in. Here you can see I got the hands figured out, I got the gauntlets worked out, and I'm just adding in the black so I can see where all those go. Again, it's something I normally don't do. I just go for broke and fill everything in black and figure it out later, but since this is a draw along and I want you guys to follow along and hopefully learn something, I'm doing all the steps that I've come to skip over the years. I realize that I'm sort of turning this into my personal essay on how I got into anime and how it used to be to watch anime back when before streaming services existed and these things were everywhere. Another thing I remember is when I got out of high school, I got a job working in a factory with my father, actually. It was hot, it was terrible, the hours were long, and unless it's something you're really into, I wouldn't recommend factory work. It's not glamorous, and when I went there, my first day, they introduced me to Lou, and Lou said, "Hey, I'm going to teach how to make this machine." They made battery cans, and Lou waves at me, and he's missing the tips of 3 of his fingers. And as an artist and a musician, somebody who plays the piano, that horrified me. And I'm like, I can't work this job for the rest of my life. If there's a chance I'm going to lose a finger, this is awful. But Lou was happy as can be, and he did his job. And I soon realized why he lost those fingers, because he didn't like to call on the tool makers to help out. He would just stick a screwdriver and shut off the safety mechanisms and do it himself. Not something I was willing to do, and yeah, it was terrifying. So we'll get back to why that's relevant in a moment. I just want to point out that we're finishing up the pencils for this one, and we're about to move on to the inks. So here's what the finished pencils look like, and now it's time to ink Bakugo. Normally when I do a drawing, I always start with the head because I want to get the most complicated thing out of the way first. But for this drawing, I decided to go with the hands and the gauntlets because, in my opinion, those were the most difficult thing to get done and over with. So, because there's a lot of shape to these hands, and you got the gauntlets, and it just looked like an awful thing to do. So, I got to that first. And as with any drawing, once you finish it, the reward and the feeling of accomplishment, and you're like, yeah, that looks cool. And then I move on to the head. And going back to Lou, the reason I bring that up is because the shop that I worked at was right next to a Blockbuster Video. Anybody remember Blockbuster Video? Raise your hands. And Blockbuster Video had an anime section. So you could go in there and you could rent a movie. So after work, I would stop at Blockbuster. I'd pick up a copy of Battle Angel Alita or whatever movie looked good. I honestly don't remember most of them because it was a while ago. But, so that's how I got my fix, because I didn't have to pay $40, $50, $60 for a video. Sometimes though, when you went to buy movies, you could buy the movies for like $20, $30, but it's a lot cheaper to rent it for $2 to $4, or even $1 if it was an older one. So that was nice, and that got me more into the anime because I could watch more of them without basically spending my whole paycheck on 2 videos. And now we're going to get back to Lou and the missing fingers. Once I saw that, I decided that I can't do this factory life thing because it's going to be a lot harder to play the piano with 3 fingers or draw a picture if I got to make some weird device to hold a pencil, because I definitely can't draw left-handed. I am a righty through and through. And so I decided that I should probably do something with my life that I actually want to do. So I decided to go to art school, which I did do, and there's stories behind that we definitely won't get into. But after a year of community college, I moved on and did 2 years of art school, and then a year of graphic design, and that got me into my desk job, and eventually that led me into getting bored enough to start drawing all the time and wanting to draw more, which made me start these videos. So I hope you're enjoying the process and follow along with me as much as I'm enjoying doing it, because if I wasn't doing this, I would be drawing a lot less, and I'd be a little less happy in my off hours. So thanks for coming along. Okay, I'm also trying out another microphone on this one because the microphone I was using before was very sensitive, and I noticed in the Batgirl commentary that it was very noisy and boomy, and I definitely added too much echo to it too, but it was just too harsh, and I didn't like it. So I decided to move over to a dynamic microphone, which is kind of a pain in the butt because it's right in front of my face, but it's definitely much quieter, I could tell already. So hopefully this improves the fidelity of what I'm doing and makes it easier to watch. So back to Bakugo, who we haven't really talked about that much in the past 16 minutes. He's very prideful and he's very arrogant, and the hero of the story is Deku, who wants to become the #1 hero, but so does Bakugo. And Bakugo went to school with Deku before UA High School, and he used to pick on him because he had no powers, and he was really not nice. He was a bully, basically. And he kind of stays a bully throughout the whole thing, but he becomes a softer bully, and he starts to listen to his friends, and he grows as a character. Even though he's still loud and angry and aggressive, he comes to appreciate teamwork and the fact that you can't do everything alone. But he used to bully Deku, and when they were at UA High School, he stumbled upon the secret that Deku got his powers from All Might and how All Might's powers worked, and he decided to keep the secret, and he became, him and Deku would sit with All Might and have private teaching lessons and go through everything. So when Deku could learn how to control the powers of All for One, All for One. And Bakugo gets one-on-one training with All Might to learn how to control his powers and make the best of what he knows. So it's a win-win for everybody. Plus it also drives him more to become the #1 hero because he sees how powerful Deku could become, and they both can't be the #1 hero, so he has to push himself to become better so that he can surpass Deku and he can be the #1 hero. But despite being loud and aggressive and angry and condescending to people around him, he's also very smart and very studious, and he understands tactics, even though his tactics are pretty much jump and hope for the best. But he eventually learns how to properly lead a team and not be so self-centered, and he starts to care for the people around him and becomes a better person for it. But he's still loud and annoying and aggressive. Now that we got the gauntlets done, the inks on this one go by pretty quickly because it's just a lot of hard angles and a lot of lines, and there's not a lot of curves. The hair, it's just a big spiky mess, and I get through it pretty quickly. And I also learned something new when we get to the colors we'll talk about. It's nothing fancy, and most of you probably knew it already, and I'm a Neanderthal who does everything the hard way, so I didn't know, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. But as you can see, now he's got ears, he's got a face, he's got gauntlets, and we just start working our way down the figure. Also, apparently, I'll be able to live stream soon, so I started putting some things together to get that ball rolling. So That's something I've never done before, so that should be fun. I'll have to talk for hours on end about whatever we're doing, whatever we're drawing, and interact with people. So it'll be interesting, but it'll be fun, and I hope some of you come along for the ride with me, because I'd like to have you there, because I'm doing it alone in a room. It's not nearly as much fun as actually having people to talk to and learning what our common likes are and what things you want to see. Like I might be sitting here and say, hey, we're going to draw Batman. And somebody might ask, hey, how did you do that thing with the cape? So, I could talk you through it, where I might skip over it on a video like this. So I think that'll be helpful for everybody. I'll learn more about what I'm doing here as a commentator, and you can learn more about whatever you want to learn on the art side of things. It's a win-win. I think I've said that more than once in this video. Win-win. So anyway, let's move on to something else. We're back on the inking. We're filling in his little head sprites. I don't know what those are. They're just a decoration to make him look cool. Kind of like a peacock, a nitroglycerin-filled peacock who shoots fire out of his hands and explosions. He also uses explosions as a propellant, so he sort of flies, and he gets pretty fast. He can keep up with Endeavor and Todoroki, the half-and-half guy with the hot and the cold, who rides on ice sleds and can propel himself with fire. And then Deku with his natural speed from his strength, and later on the other powers he acquires, like Black Whip and Float and Fajing, and there's a few others. And we'll do a Deku episode, and we'll draw Deku, and I'll probably pick his when he does the Vigilante arc, when he's all tattered up and he's looking pretty worn down and badass, and he almost has an evil look to him because he thinks he has to do everything on his own because he doesn't want to put his friends in danger. But again, we'll talk more about Deku when we get to his drawing. That'll probably be closer to when the new season starts. I think it starts in August. So yeah, we'll probably do a Deku and an All Might, but I really want to do a Stain because I really like the look of Stain, and I like the whole hero killer and his cause. He was misguided as it may be. I think it's a good arc. One of the prints that I sell at conventions, one of the things I like to do is cover recreations of older comic books and replace the heroes. And I did one of Amazing Fantasy 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man, where he's swinging and he's holding a criminal, except the guy swinging is Stain, and he's holding Bakugo. And I redid all the word bubbles, and I redrew all the text. And it's Bakugo basically saying that he's going to kill him, and in the standard Bakugo shout, and goes through the whole thing. I would actually like to do a video on something like that, but when you do something like that, you draw the picture, and then you spend just as long setting up the text and designing it so it looks like the old cover, because some of those fonts don't exist. You can't just go to DaFont or buy a font that was hand-drawn 50, 60 years ago. You have to pretty much hand-draw it yourself. Find letters in common, trace them off, put them together. It's a whole ordeal, but when you see the final project, it's definitely worth it. And maybe we'll do something like that on here one of these days, because those are a lot of fun to do, and it'll show you something different other than just character drawing and simple backgrounds and sometimes complex backgrounds. But yeah, those are fun. So let me know if you want to see something like that too, because it'll take some doing, but I could definitely do one here. It'll just take a little research on the best way to present it, because it could get kind of dry drawing letters and laying out text. It's not the funnest thing in the world to watch. So, I don't know. We'll get there when we get there. So now we're pretty much done with the inks. I mean, now we just got to do all the fun stuff, adding in the lines and the little details and the ticks so it doesn't look like it came out of a coloring book. Because if you ever look at a coloring book, it's pretty much just the outline, because you got to color it and fill it in yourself. And we definitely don't want our drawings to look like that. Although some artists get away with it. I forgot who did it. The guy who did the Nick series, the first appearance of X-23, he has that sort of style where the line work is very simple and light, and then he watercolors, and his colors carry the art, and it's beautiful. And it's not something that I'm really all that proficient in, but I am going to start on my own time, not in the videos, working out like watercolor brushes and things like that, and learn that so we could add that kind of stuff into these videos, because if you stop learning, you get sterile and everything starts to look the same. And we don't want that, and I don't want that. And right now I'm at a point where I could bang out pretty much anything the way that I draw, and it's gonna look decent. It's gonna look good. I mean, it depends on what you like as art, if you like it or not. Okay, so now the inking's done, and we're on to coloring Bakugo. And like I said earlier, I learned something new. Being a Neanderthal and doing things the same way I've been doing since I learned how to use Photoshop back in the early pre-CC days. We won't get into the actual version because it's frightening. But I would select an area and I would fill it. But apparently now, with all these fancy things, you could set the color picker to use all the layers, so anything you select will fill with that color. You don't have to make any selections. You don't have to trace things out in color. I mean, you have to fill things in and fix things that it missed, but I mean, you just point and click and you get orange or green or black or gray anywhere. It's pretty cool. I mean, I sort of knew you could do that. I just never bothered to figure it out because I would just do it the way I've been doing it because you stick with what you know. It's comfortable. But in this case, it's good that I tried something different and moved on from my Neanderthal ways. So the coloring of this goes by fairly quickly. I mean, you'll see that the coloring doesn't take long at all in this one because I'm just filling everything in right off the bat. I still have to go in with the pen and do all the highlights and the actually shadowing. I don't really put much highlights on this. We just add in the darks, and the highlight is the bursts coming from his hands. So we get all that done. But yeah, look, this is nice. I mean, it cuts the video time down a lot because I'm filling it in within a couple minutes, but it also saves me a lot of headaches of tracing out every single piece. So it's a win-win for everybody. Another Bakugo thing, I'm going by memory here, so I'll probably screw up a little bit of the story, but it's earlier in the seasons where he's captured by Stain, and Stain, he's the hero killer. He kills heroes because, I'm pretty sure it's because he doesn't think that they're worthy and they're grandstanders and they're not really heroes, and he wants to show them what a true hero is. And he holds Bakugo hostage, and he wants the heroes to come save him so he could murder more heroes. And he ends up getting saved by Deku, and when Deku saves him, it really brings him down, and he realizes that he can't do everything by himself, and it gives him even though he's kind of has a contempt for Deku, it also gives him more respect for Deku. And All Might shows up too, and Stain has a brain aneurysm and ends up in prison, and that's how that ends. And it's a good arc for Bakugo because it grows him as a character. Now, as far as the colors go, we're moving on to the shadows. We basically just add shadows to this one. When I do the blasts coming from his hands, you get more of a highlight, and that took me a while to get at because usually when I'm drawing a drawing and I put something like a blast in, it's built into the drawing. I'll draw it in the pencil stage and it'll be part of the inks, and then we'll color it, and sometimes you gotta change the black to an orange or a brown or a yellow to get the burst effect, but it's already built into the drawing. On this one I sort of skipped that in the initial drawing, and it comes to bite me because I end up going through a few versions of the burst, which we didn't even get to yet, so I'm not even sure why I'm talking about it. Because right now we're just adding shadows to his green and his jeans and just giving it more dimension, because without it it's just flat and it looks like a coloring book. Especially you notice when you do the hair and the face where things start to pop. And we're getting to the point where we are going to get to the bursts and how I figure it out. And basically what I do is I draw the shape of the burst over the pencils in yellow, and then I fill it in. The problem here is it's such a big burst, it covers a good percentage of everything I drew before. Here you can see shadows of things I tried before that didn't work. I didn't really leave it all in the video, but what I do is I make a copy of the ink layer, and I bring the ink layer up over the burst when I'm done, and I bring the burst up to 100% so the colors are there, and they're brighter than they look now because now I have it reduced to like 60% so I can see underneath it. But when we get to that part after we add in the orange and the Ben-Day dots, my favorite thing ever to be created, and I'm glad I got a bunch of brushes for that, and it all comes together. As you can see on the top, I didn't talk about this, but I put a bunch of color swatches in there before I started coloring. I probably should have included that in the video, but I didn't. So sorry about that. But those color swatches are all the colors on Bakugo. So when I need a color, you just click your color picker up there instead of trying to find it on his body, or if you didn't use it yet and you got to search for colors. Here we're going over it, and it's very helpful. Sorry, back to the other thing. So here we got the thing where I brought the colors back up to 100%. I put a black layer over it, and I reduced the black layer a little bit. So that way you can still see what's underneath it, but you still got the blast going over the top. And here I am now doing the Ben-Day dots I was talking about earlier. And we get the whole blast thing looking at least the way I wanted it originally. All that splattery stuff, we take that most of that away because, again, that's an earlier attempt that I didn't leave in here because I did like 5 or 6 different attempts at the burst, and I was not happy with any of them until I got to the end here. And it's more of the remnants of a burst than the actual burst, or powering up to the burst instead of the burst. We'll leave that interpretation up to the viewer. But at the end, I'm happy with it. And with this being My Hero Academia, and the big joke is all the backgrounds are always blue no matter where they're fighting. It's always a bright blue sunny sky, and I was gonna do something, more fun and bursty and in conjunction with the drawing and to complement it. But a friend of mine's like, no, you gotta do the blue, just blue. So me being me, I couldn't just do blue. I had to add a little something to it. So I did make it a little fancier. Also, instead of my signature, I threw in a little FM3 logo. And here's my compromise in the blue background. I threw in the Ben-Day dots to give it a little texture and a little something. And there we go. Bakugo's colored. Thanks again for stopping by, and we'll see you on the next one.